I remember the moment everything went black. 1 second I was laughing with my son in the car, the sunlight bouncing off the dashboard, and the next, there was nothing but the sound of metal twisting and shattering. When I finally opened my eyes, I was lying on a hospital bed, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling my nose, the incessant beeping of monitors surrounding me like a cruel orchestra. The lights above were so bright they blurred, almost too much to focus on, and my head throbbed with a pain that made it hard to think. I could hear the faint whispers of nurses, the distant echo of footsteps, but everything felt unreal, like I was floating in some liminal space between life and death. Then I heard my name being called, and a voice I knew all too well. It was the doctor, and he was speaking to my son. Your mother didn't make it," he said. Those words hit me harder than the accident ever could have. And the worst part, I wasn't dead. At least, I wasn't supposed to be. I could barely move. My limbs felt like lead, but I could hear everything. And I couldn't help but wonder, was I wrong for wanting to know why my son's face went pale, why he didn't scream, why he didn't run to me? Tell me, would you have reacted differently if you were in my shoes? It all started a week before the accident, though at the time, I had no idea that something so small could unravel my entire world. My son Ryan and I had always been close. He was 16, bright, thoughtful, and for some reason, always seemed to know when I needed a laugh or a hug. We'd survived the messy divorce years ago, both of us scarred but stubbornly protective of each other. The accident wasn't just bad luck. It was the culmination of a day that started completely ordinary. I had left work early because of a headache that wouldn't quit, and Ryan insisted we grab ice cream on the way home. I was hesitant at first, feeling a creeping fatigue I couldn't explain, but he begged me until I gave in. We laughed, joked, and for a few fleeting hours, the stress of my job, the tension of my lingering loneliness, all melted away. Little did I know, that would be the last time we would feel that kind of normal. The crash happened so fast it's hard to describe in detail, but I remember the screech of brakes, the smell of burning rubber, and the blinding light of headlights inches from our faces. My body hit the steering wheel with a force that knocked the air out of me, and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I could barely make sense of the surroundings. The car was a twisted mess of metal, and my legs and arms felt disconnected from my body, heavy and unresponsive. I could hear Ryan crying, his voice shaking, calling my name over and over. And then, just as quickly as I heard him, I felt someone shaking me, a nurse perhaps, or maybe it was my own imagination. The next moments, or were they hours, are hazy. I was lifted onto a stretcher, sirens blaring, flashing lights, voices yelling instructions I could barely comprehend. And all the while, a part of my mind was screaming, Ryan, is he okay? Did we make it? Did I ruin everything? I kept my eyes closed, pretending that keeping still would somehow make it all better. When I finally woke up in the hospital, everything was quieter, eerily so. The bright white lights above me were almost blinding, and the first thing I noticed was the emptiness of the room. No family, no visitors, just the hum of machines and a faint smell of antiseptic. Then the doctor came in and everything changed. I heard the words that no parent ever wants to hear, words that were meant for Ryan, but somehow penetrated the fog of my own trauma. Your mother didn't make it. My chest tightened, and I tried to speak, to tell him that I was still here, that I was alive, but the words wouldn't come. My lips moved, my eyes begged him to understand, but he never saw me. He was talking to Ryan, who stood frozen at the doorway, his face pale, eyes wide. I watched him crumble, watched him slump to the floor, and I felt a terror unlike anything else I've ever experienced. How could someone hear that their mother was gone while I was lying right there, barely conscious, breathing alive? The injustice of it twisted inside me, a gnawing sensation I couldn't ignore. As the hours passed, I tried to speak again, to reach out to anyone who could hear me, but no one did. The nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting monitors, asking questions to which I was supposedly too weak to respond. I was trapped in a body that betrayed me, and my mind raced with 1,000 questions. How would Ryan process this? How would he recover from thinking I was gone forever? And, selfishly, how would I survive watching him mourn for me when I was still here? That thought consumed me, more than the pain, more than the fear, more than the haze of medications that left me drifting in and out of consciousness. I needed to get to him, to tell him I was alive. But every attempt left me exhausted and gasping for breath. Before the accident, I thought I knew my son. I thought I understood him, his moods, his subtle signs of distress. But lying in that hospital bed, powerless, I realized how little I really knew. There were secrets he held, things he hadn't told me, glances and murmurs that now took on a sinister new meaning. Was he hiding something? Was he protecting me or himself? Or was it the accident that had broken him more than I could see? I couldn't tell. I only knew that I needed to reach him before he believed the lie that I was gone. The first visitor I was aware of wasn't Ryan. It was my ex-husband. He stood in the doorway, his expression a mix of pity and something I couldn't identify. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him to leave, to get Ryan here, but I couldn't. He came closer, checking the monitors, asking me questions I couldn't answer. Every word he spoke felt like nails on a chalkboard, a reminder that I was not in control. When he finally left, I felt a hollow emptiness, a dread that only grew as the day turned to night. I realized I was completely at the mercy of people who didn't understand the urgency, who couldn't see that the greatest danger was not my physical state, but what was happening to my son while I was trapped in silence. Hours dragged on, or maybe it was days. I lost all sense of time. The machines beeped in monotony, the doctors came with their cold, clinical questions, and I drifted in a fog of pain and disbelief. And then I saw him. Ryan came into the room, hesitated at the doorway, and when his eyes met mine, there was a flicker, confusion, disbelief, fear, and something else I couldn't place. He stepped closer, and for a brief, beautiful moment, I thought he might see me, might understand that I was still alive. But the moment passed. He stepped back, tears streaming down his face, and I realized the full horror of the situation. He thought I was gone. He thought he had lost me forever. And I had to watch him grieve, completely powerless to comfort him, completely unable to reach out and tell him that I was still here. It was in that moment, lying there, listening to my son sob, that I made a decision. I couldn't stay passive. I couldn't let this misunderstanding fester. I had to find a way to make him see me, to make him understand that I was still alive. And yet, every attempt seemed doomed to fail. My body refused me, my voice was weak, and the world around me seemed indifferent to my presence. It felt like a cruel test, one designed to punish me for surviving when others had assumed I hadn't. And the more I tried, the more hopeless it seemed. How do you convince someone that you're alive when everything, every authority figure, every sound, every assumption tells them otherwise? As the night stretched on, the isolation became unbearable. I could hear Ryan in the hallway, pacing, crying, speaking in low murmurs to himself, as if trying to process what he thought was the worst day of his life. I wanted to call out, to scream, to shake him awake from the nightmare, but my body betrayed me at every turn. My mind raced, imagining all the worst-case scenarios. What if he never believed me? What if he was broken forever because of this? I had to find a way, any way to reach him, and in that despair a seed of determination took root. I couldn't give up, not now, not ever. This was more than survival. It was about reclaiming my presence in my son's life, about proving that life could continue even after the unthinkable. So that's the situation I found myself in, trapped in a hospital bed, alive but unable to communicate, watching my son grieve for me, unable to intervene. I had to make a choice: remain silent and let him believe the worst, or find a way to show him the truth, no matter what it took. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and imagine this for yourself. If you were lying there, helpless, watching your child mourn for you, what would you do? How far would you go to make them understand that you were still here, still fighting, still their parent? Take a moment, really picture it, because what happened after that changed everything: our lives, our relationship, and the very way I viewed the fragility of life. I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer. I could see Ryan's pain so clearly, and it was unbearable, like a knife twisting in my chest. I remembered every moment of his life, every birthday we celebrated, every time I held him when he was scared of the dark. There was no way I could let a misunderstanding, no matter how big, tear that bond apart. But the problem was obvious. How do you prove you're alive when everyone else believes you're gone? How do you make your own child see you when you're trapped inside a body that barely responds? I had to find a way, some method to make him understand, to break through the invisible barrier between us. It started with small movements. A twitch of a finger, a slight squeeze of my hand whenever someone reached for the monitors. At first, I thought no one noticed, but then I saw it, Ryan's eyes flickering toward me with something like doubt, like maybe, just maybe, he sensed I was still here. His breathing hitched, and for a moment, I swore he leaned closer, searching for a trace of the mother he thought he had lost. I knew I had to keep this up, keep fighting against the impossible odds stacked against me. Every ounce of strength I had, every fragment of consciousness, was dedicated to reaching him. Hours passed. I don't know how many. I had lost all sense of time. The doctors came and went, but I ignored them. Their questions, their tests, their pitying glances, they didn't matter. Only Ryan mattered. I started trying to manipulate my body, using whatever tiny muscles still responded. A squeeze of my hand when he touched mine, a blink when he leaned too close. I had no idea if he understood, but I knew I had to try. Desperation sharpened my focus like nothing else ever could. I remembered the stories I had read online about people trapped in comas, people misunderstood by the world, and it gave me hope. Maybe he could feel me, maybe he could see me if I just persisted. And then it happened. Ryan was sitting by my bedside, talking to me as if I were already gone. His words were raw, painful. "I can't believe you're gone, Mom. I don't know how I'll live without you. Everything feels wrong. I feel like I'm going to lose my mind." My heart shattered. The sound of him grieving for me, believing I wasn't there, it was unbearable. I summoned every bit of strength left and squeezed his hand harder than ever before. His head snapped up, eyes wide, searching. "Mom," he whispered, trembling. I blinked, once, twice, trying to make him see me. His lips parted, his gaze locked on mine, and for the first time since the accident, I felt a spark of recognition. He gasped, like he couldn't believe it, like the impossible had just happened. The moment was chaotic, beautiful, terrifying. Ryan pulled back, as if checking to make sure I was real. "Mom, you're alive," he said, his voice cracking with disbelief. I tried to nod, to speak, to tell him everything, but my voice was weak, almost non-existent. He grabbed a nurse, dragging her over, insisting she check me. I watched as she confirmed the monitors, checked my vitals, and finally acknowledged the truth. I was alive. I was really alive. Ryan fell to his knees beside my bed, tears streaming down his face, sobbing, clutching my hands as if he never wanted to let go. I felt the weight of weeks, months, maybe even years of fear, anxiety, and misunderstanding lift off my chest in a single, overwhelming flood. But the story didn't end there. The crash, the confusion, the misunderstanding, it had opened a window into deeper truths. Ryan had been hiding something from me long before the accident. It wasn't intentional, not in a malicious way, but the trauma of the crash and the stress of believing I was gone brought it all to the surface. He confessed, trembling, that he had been struggling in school, hiding anxiety and depression, trying not to worry me. He admitted to making choices that I wouldn't have approved of, things he had kept secret out of fear. I held his hands and listened, understanding now more than ever that my absence, even for a short time, had made him feel completely alone. We talked for hours, words flowing in a mixture of relief, guilt, love. It was painful, but it was honest. And in that honesty, I realized that the accident, terrifying and almost fatal as it had been, had forced us to confront truths we had been avoiding for years. The days after the accident were still incredibly difficult. My body was weak, recovering from injuries that would leave scars both visible and invisible. Physical therapy was grueling, each movement a reminder of the fragility of my body. But my focus remained on Ryan. I couldn't let him relapse into despair, couldn't allow him to feel that he was alone again. We spent every moment we could together, talking, crying, laughing, rebuilding the trust and closeness that the accident had nearly destroyed. Every glance, every touch, every shared moment felt like a miracle. I had survived something unimaginable, yes, but what truly mattered was surviving together, rebuilding our bond in the face of fear and pain. There were other consequences, too. Friends and extended family had been told I didn't make it. The accident had caused confusion and panic among everyone who knew us. I had to explain, to face the disbelief, to confront people who had mourned me publicly, only to learn I was still here. It was awkward, surreal, and sometimes infuriating. Some people were thrilled, others embarrassed, and a few even accused me of orchestrating the misunderstanding, something I never could imagined anyone would suggest. But Ryan stood by me, and that was all that mattered. His presence reminded me why I had fought so hard to reach him, to prove I was alive, to make sure he knew he wasn't alone. Even now, months after the accident, the memories linger. I have nightmares where I relive the moment of the crash, the hospital room, the silence, the feeling of being trapped in my own body while Ryan mourned me. But alongside those nightmares are memories of triumph, of connection, of fighting through impossible odds. I think about the moment when he finally recognized me, when he realized I was truly alive, and I feel a surge of emotion that is almost indescribable. That moment saved us, not just physically, but emotionally. It reminded me that love, persistence, and determination can overcome even the most impossible obstacles. Looking back, I understand now that the accident was more than just a physical trauma. It was a test of our bond, our resilience, and our ability to confront truths we had avoided. It forced me to see Ryan in a new light, to understand the pressures and fears he carried silently. It forced him to confront the fragility of life and the value of connection. We emerged from the ordeal not unscathed, but stronger, closer, and more aware of the depth of our love for each other. And in that awareness, I found a kind of peace, a certainty that no matter what life throws at us, we can face it together. There were moments, of course, when doubt crept in. Would Ryan ever truly forgive himself for thinking I was gone? Would he recover fully from the emotional trauma of believing he had lost me? I watched him struggle, offering comfort, support, and honesty at every step, and slowly, he healed. Our conversations became easier, our laughter more frequent, our bond unshakable. And in those moments I realized the true lesson of the accident. Survival is not just about staying alive physically, it's about fighting to maintain the connections that make life worth living, about refusing to let fear and misunderstanding destroy the people you love. Eventually the doctors released me, and we returned home together. The house felt different, brighter somehow, as if it recognized that we had survived something extraordinary. We re-established routines, small rituals of normalcy that were both comforting and healing. Ryan would sit with me for hours, asking questions, sharing thoughts, and slowly shedding the layers of fear and grief that had built up around him. I watched him grow stronger, more confident, more open, and I knew that our shared trauma had, paradoxically, created a new foundation for trust and love. I also learned to appreciate the fragility of life in ways I never had before. Every morning, waking up, breathing, seeing Ryan's face, I am reminded of how close we came to losing everything. Every ordinary moment became precious. A shared cup of coffee, a joke, a smile, a hug. These things were no longer mundane. They were miracles, reminders of survival and resilience. The accident taught me that life is unpredictable, fragile, and often terrifying. But that doesn't mean it isn't worth fighting for. And sometimes, the greatest battles are not fought against circumstances, but against the silence and misunderstanding that threaten to isolate us from the ones we love most. Looking back on that day on the hospital room, on the words that weren't meant for me but were heard anyway, I realize now how close we came to permanent heartbreak. But I also see the power of determination, love, and connection. I fought with every ounce of my being to reach Ryan, to make him understand that I was still here, and in doing so, we both survived in ways neither of us could have anticipated. Life is messy, terrifying, and unpredictable, but it is also miraculous, resilient, and deeply beautiful. So if there's one thing I want you to take from my story, it's this: never underestimate the power of persistence, never take the ones you love for granted, and never forget that even in the darkest, most impossible moments, hope can be found, and sometimes, that hope is all it takes to save not just a life, but a bond that defines everything that truly matters. If you were on my side, fighting to reach someone you love, I know you would understand. And if this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you would do if you were in my shoes. Would you fight as hard as I did? I'll see you all in the next story.